to show you what we're going to be making today, which is going to be a paper plate poinsettia. Okay, so I really like this craft because it doesn't matter what kind of holiday you celebrate. The poinsettia is just like the quintessential flower for the holiday season, right? So it's perfect. Anyone can do this. It's so easy, and I'm going to show you how to do it today. So we're going to be using watercolors, but I did make an acrylic sample for you to see in case you do want to do that later on. So I wanted to show you the difference. So this one in my right hand, this is watercolor, and this is what we're going to be doing today. This one is acrylic paint. And you can see the glitter is everywhere. So I chose not to do this smaller or younger kids. It's a little trickier with the glitter. Glitter is kind of a taboo thing in arts and crafts to use or not use the glitter. But I thought it was great for this project, and it doesn't get too out of control with the watercolors. So we're gonna go this route. Save you parents a little sanity. So, okay, this is what we're going to be making, and now I'm going to show you the supplies that we're going to be using to create this flower, okay? So first things first, if you would like, this is totally optional, but I like to put wax paper down or parchment paper down on my workspace anytime I'm using glitter. It makes it so much easier for cleanup if you spill any of it. And with children, it's usually gonna get spilled. If you're not using glitter glue, I would definitely recommend doing this. It's just gonna make cleanup so much easier. Okay, now for the supplies. So of course, we are going to need paper plates. These are uncoated paper plates, so they're the very inexpensive, thin paper plates. They bend really easily, and if you look, you can see the pencil shows up very easily on this paper plate. If they are coated, you're going to have a harder time when the paint dries. Your edges aren't going to bend as easily, and you're not going to get that flower effect of the petals curving. So make sure you're using uncoated paper plates. And these are, I believe they're 9-inch. I cannot remember what the centimeters were, but I did tell Lauren, and they're listed in the event, so make sure you check out the supply list there to be prepared if you're going to join us, okay? So paper plates, you're going to need 3 paper plates, okay? The first one will be for the leaves layer, the second one will be for the larger petals, and the third one will be for the smaller petals on top. The centerpiece is part of the smaller petals, so you're not going to need an additional piece for that. Okay. Next, you are going to need watercolor paints. Mine are in a tube, but you can absolutely use Crayola. Whatever kind of watercolor paint you have is totally fine, and it will work. I just bought these recently at a Black Friday sale, so I'm going to be using them and trying them out. They're Arteza brand. So it's a really good brand, and I'm just now getting into the tubes of watercolor. I usually use the pans, which are what come in like a set of Crayola. So, okay, then you're going to need a paintbrush. You do not need anything fancy. If you want, you can also use, I know a lot of parents that like to use these. It's a little easier than having a cup of water on the side. You're welcome to use these water brush. So this has some you unscrew, some you pull the top out, but you fill it with water, and so you don't need to keep dipping your brush in the water as often. So just makes for less spills. They sell these pretty much any craft store online as well. They're super easy to use. So you would just dip it in the paint and swirl it around, and you give it a little squeeze to get some water out of the brush. Okay, so you're welcome to use that if that's easier for you. You're also going to need a pencil. You don't have to use mechanical, you can use a traditional pencil. And you're going to need an eraser. I like to use my kneaded eraser pretty much for everything. If you aren't familiar with a kneaded eraser, It is a gummy type of eraser that pulls apart, and when you want to clean the eraser, you just do this over and over again, and you'll get it clean. And what I like the most about these erasers is you can mold and shape it to whatever shape you want, so it's a little bit easier to get around edges and small little marks that you want to erase. Okay? All right. Next, you are going to need a pair of scissors because we are going to be cutting around our leaves. You will need, if you are using 2 watercolors, you're going to need some kind of palette. If you're using watercolors in a pan, you do not need a palette. Do not worry about that. That's why it's not on the supply list. You're going to need a paper towel to dab your paintbrush on in between changing colors. You will need a cup of water. You will need glue, whatever kind of glue you want to use to adhere glitter to your paper plate. I just use Elmer's clear glue. That way I know it's going to dry clear and I don't have to worry about white glue everywhere. Okay, then make sure you have fine salt. You do not want to use rock salt or anything like that, just regular old table salt. And last but not least, oh wait, 2 more things, sorry. You're going to need glitter. So you really only need 3 colors: red, green, and you can use gold. I have yellow, so I'm just going to use yellow, but you are welcome to use gold or even silver if you want. One thing I really like to stress in my art classes is use what you have. Do not go out and buy expensive art supplies to do children's arts and crafts. They're still exploring, they're figuring out their creativity, and so they're not focused on the quality of the art materials, right? So just use what you have. Make it easy. If they do love it and it is something they want to pursue more in depth and possibly professionally later in life, then you can upgrade to other supplies, okay? The last thing you are gonna need is, you're gonna need really just 1 Q-tip, but I just have the spots. So just a cotton swab. Any brand is fine. I just happen to have these at my local market. And that is it. That's all the supplies we're going to need. It does seem like a lot, but it's going to be very easy. Okay, so don't freak out. Before we get started, I do want to say everyone creates art differently. Do not worry if your flower does not turn out exactly like Miss Crystal's, because every artist has a different style and every artist is learning at different rates, okay? I'm very, very big on that. I want you to explore your creativity and figure out your own style and your vision, how you see things, you know, through your eyes, because that's what makes your creativity unique, okay? All right, so we are going to jump in. First thing we're gonna need are our plates. You just need 1 to begin with. We're gonna do 1 layer at a time. So we're gonna start with our leaves. Well, if I can get them apart. There we go. Okay. You take your paper plate. I drew a circle on here because I wanted to show you a little trick. If you're not great at drawing circles, you can find an item to easily trace for the center. I'm going to flip this around so you can see the shape of the. You see I have a circle in the middle. Sorry, I always get a little confused with the mirrored angle. I have a circle in the middle that I left to be able to glue the top layers to the bottom layer. Okay, so we're going to make sure we draw a circle in the center of our plate. So I'll do another one so you can see how I trace this. I like to hold things like this for my classes so you can easily see. This is a little bit tricky for me, but I'm going to try to hold it at the same time I trace it. So let's see how this goes. So I'm just placing it in the center of my plate, and I'm just using, this is just a rubber cement bottle. So I'm using the top of the bottle. You can use whatever kind of circular object you have at home that's easy to use. A top to a jar, whatever it may be. Find something that you can use easily, or just draw the circle if you want to do that. I just like to show little tricks to help you along the way if you're not the most artistic person, okay? So, let's see if I can do this. We are going to hold that, and I am just tracing around the top of the jar. Not the best as I'm holding it like that, but creates a circle. So I did it on my desk before the live video, so it would actually be a circle. Okay, so now that we have our circle, we are going to draw our leaves, okay? So these leaves, if I hold it like this, it might remind you of an American football, an almond, maybe an eye. So we're going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4 of these leaves around our circle, okay? So I'm going to hold it up so you can see me draw it. First, actually, let me show you this. If you do not know how to draw that shape, I'm going to show you how to draw it. So an easy thing you can do is draw a line, and then you're just going to curve that top line, connect the lines, okay? And then curve that bottom line and connect the lines, okay? Another way to do it, I'll break it down into easy shapes for you, okay? Draw oval, okay? Then draw one triangle going towards the right and one triangle going towards the left, okay? Then you can erase these inside lines. Look at that. There you go. So that's an easy way to make that shape, okay? Now, let's make 4 of those on our plate around our circle, okay? So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, north. Well, this is gonna be backwards for you guys actually, so you wanna make it like the letter T, like a cross, okay? So at the top, we're just gonna draw our leaves, and these do not have to look the same. Actually, the project looks better if they are not identical because variety into the shape of the leaf, making it look more realistic, okay? So that's 1. There's 2. And I'm not going quite to the edge of my plate. I'm stopping the end of the leaf just before the curve at the very tip of the plate, okay? So I'm going to turn it a little bit, make it easier. There's 3. Okay. And 4. Okay, so it should look something like this when you're done. Okay, so what we're going to set this aside for now, and then we're going to work on the second layer of petals. Okay, so you can see they're as the leaves, and I know you can't tell too easily, but there is the circle for the bottom leaf, okay? The petals, we're not going to cut quite to the center, so there will be a little bit of a middle, but we're not going to draw it first, okay? So let me show you how you can easily understand. Okay, so for this one, we're going to use the same shape as we use for the petals, or for the leaves on the petals, okay? So all your leaves and your petals will follow along the same almond type shape, okay? So if you want, if it's helpful for you, you can draw a little dot in the center And you know that's going to be the middle of your flower. Mine's a little off center, but that's okay. Okay, same shape, okay? And this time, I'm not going to go as far to the edge as I did with the leaves, okay? And we're going to do 5 of these instead of 4. Okay, so it should look something like that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, the shape is not the same. It's going to look more realistic. When you think about a real flower, they come in all different shapes, colors, sizes. The leaves and the petals can be different shapes from each other. So if you want to take a little creative liberty, you're welcome to, you know, add little edges to the leaves or the petals. If you're having fun with it and you want to think outside the box, I very much encourage that. Okay, so that's going to be our large petals, and we're going to set this aside for when we cut out our petals and leaves. Okay, and we're going to do one more, and this is going to be our top petals. Okay, so when you do this one, you want to make sure that you're leaving enough center to be able to come back later and put these dots in the center. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to make the edges follow, let's see if you can see, okay, there you go. So see this inner circle on my plate? That's as large as I want the small petals to be, okay? So when I draw to the edges, that's where I'm stopping. Let's see if this light's a little better. I feel like it's very dark, so I just want to make sure. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. All right. So, same thing. If you want to draw a little dot in the center, you're welcome to, if that's helpful. And we're going to do 5 petals as well. Okay? We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so this should look somewhat like your larger petals. Okay, but you can see this one is a little different size, but it's a similar shape. Okay, and so when we cut them out, we'll position them so they're alternating, and you'll be able to see both of the petals. Okay. All right. Now we are going to cut out leaves. Okay. So you're going to need your scissors. If you need a parent to help you, make sure you ask. Do not grab scissors by yourself if you are not old enough to do so. Okay. Scissors can be very dangerous. Okay, so we are just going to cut along our lines, okay, making sure to leave the center part. Okay, so you want to cut like that around every side, okay? So I'm going to continue cutting mine out. And if you finish before I do cutting yours out, you are welcome to move on to cutting out your flower shapes, your petals. While I'm doing this, I want to offer some substitutes. Okay, so like I said, use what you have around the house. Do not feel like you need to go out and buy fancy art supplies to do this, okay? So I want to give you some alternatives you can use to some of the supplies. So for example, I showed you the acrylic paint option I did. So that's one substitute you can do. If you don't want to use watercolor, or you don't, but you have acrylic or tempera paint, you are more than welcome to use that paint. Like I said, the edges will not curve up as easily. What I did with these edges after they dried is I took a pencil, you can use a paintbrush too, and I curled the edges this way. Okay, so if you use acrylic or tempera paint, you're going to have to do that because when it dries, it's heavier than watercolor paint, and it's not curve those edges. Okay, next I'm going to move on to my large flower petals. And remember, do not cut the center on this one. On this one, you want to make sure that you go just to where your petals meet, because we want to make sure we have enough space left for the interior. Okay, so you're going to cut them like that all around. Okay, all right, another substitution you can use is, okay, if you don't want to use a glitter pen, a glitter glue pen, or just glue and glitter, you could actually use yarn. To do the same pattern that I'll show you when we get to that point, but you're gonna glue yarn down. So you would cut little strips of yarn and glue it down. So that's just a way. If you don't want to use glitter, which I completely understand, believe me, you're welcome to use yarn. Another thing you could do is you could simply use marker or crayon. So that way you don't have to use glitter, and you can create detail in that way. So I will show you when we get to that point how you can do that. Okay, I am on my last large petal. Okay, so it should look something like that after you cut it out. Okay, so this one, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with my large petals. Okay. And again, you want to make sure you do not cut to the center. You want to cut to where your petals meet, just like that. So again, do that all the way around on both sides. If you've made a craft like this before, let me know in the comments. Let me know if it was the same kind of flower, if you did a different kind of flower. I've done a project like this with my in-person classes a few years ago, and the kids loved it. We just did regular, just plain old flowers. Nothing, no particular kind of flower, but they turned out really pretty. And the kids had a lot of fun coming up with different colors for their flowers because we didn't all follow the same color choices. Okay, so I have my 3 pieces cut out. Your leaves should look like this. Your larger petals should look like this, and your smaller petals should look like this. So when we put them together, we're going to try to catty corner them, or there we go. So it looks something like that when we have them glued down. Okay, so the next step, make sure you recycle your paper. The next step we're going to do is actually painting our leaves with watercolor. Okay, so I chose red and green, so I'm going to paint all of my leaves green, and I'm going to paint both of my petals red. Okay, so let's start with the leaves. Just going to put a little bit of watercolor in my palette, so I have it ready to go. And if you're using a set of pan watercolors, like Crayola or something like that, just put a little bit of water. What I like to do, you can either wet your brush and move it around in the paint, or you can take a eyedropper or I think they're called a pipette, or pipette, I think. And just take a couple drops of water and put it on your pan of watercolor, just 2 to 3 drops. And that should give you enough water on your paint to be able to start using it, okay? So you can see mine is almost like acrylic when it comes out, right? So I'm just gonna add a little bit of water to mine using my brush. So I am dipping my brush in the water, and then I'm going to dip it in my paint. We're going green first for our leaves, okay? So dip it in my paint, get a little bit more water. Okay. So it doesn't have to be super thick. It's up to you how dark you want it to be. Notebook back. Okay. And I'm just gonna start. Oh, you guys, hold on. I forgot something. We need to erase our pencil lines. So let's do that. I'm so sorry. I forgot that step. So I'm gonna erase that. I don't think I can hold them like that and erase. So let me do my small petals. Erase those lines real quick. Or if you want, you can flip it over. That's another option. It's totally up to you, but it's important that you erase the lines because watercolor is not opaque like acrylic paint. So if you're using acrylic or tempera, you actually do not have to do this because your pencil lines are not going to show through your paint. But if you are using watercolor, your pencil lines will show through your paint, okay? So just erase your lines like that. So you can still see a faint line, and that's totally okay. That will cover up, but something like this is not going to cover up, okay? So just erase those lines from your petals and your leaves. And I'll have one little spot where it might show on my leaves where I put the paint, but that's okay. That's how we learn, right? We make mistakes and we learn from our mistakes. So that's okay. And Miss Crystal has been doing this a very long time. I'm probably as old, if not older, than some of your parents. So you can see nobody's perfect. I still make mistakes no matter how long I've been doing this. Okay, so I'm just doing my leaves now. I've got my petals erased. So both my petals look like this, okay? And now I'm just erasing the pencil marks around my leaves so I can continue painting. Do not feel like you have to follow along exactly with me. If you have finished erasing your lines and you want to move on to painting, feel free to do that. I do not want to hold you up. It's no fun when you have to wait around, right? And art is supposed to be fun. So, like I said, nobody's perfect. If you make a mistake, that's okay. Just fix it and move along. If you didn't erase your pencil lines and you started putting paint down, you could also just use another paper plate and outline whatever part you started painting. It's a quick craft. It doesn't take too long, and practice makes perfect, right? So if you have to do it again, it's just another opportunity to learn, okay? All right, so let's continue painting our leaves. You'll see Miss Crystal ripped hers a little bit, but that's okay. I'll fix it. It's no big deal. Okay, so what we're gonna do is you want to make sure your leaves are fairly damp when you're doing this because we're gonna put salt over the paint and that's gonna give us some texture. But if your paint isn't damp, then you're not gonna be able to, like the salt's not going to work properly. Texture, okay? So you see this is very quick that I'm doing this because if your lines are perfect, you're not going to get as much texture either, okay? So when you do all these different lines and they dry over each other and the brush strokes are overlapping, that's creating texture. Okay, so before we move on to our petals, we are going to take our salt, okay? Again, parents, if you want to put down wax paper or parchment paper, even tin aluminum foil. Yeah, aluminum foil, aluminium foil. I think that's how you guys say it. I'm trying to you are familiar with as well. Okay, so we are going to put some salt. So just lay it flat, and you're just going to put a little salt on it. It doesn't have to be a lot. You just want to make sure that you're getting it on the paint so that when the salt lands, it's going to push the color and paint away from it. So it'll create a really cool texture. Let me show you on the one I have dried. So see all those little dots on my leaves? That's from salt, okay? All right, so I'm going to set that one aside. Just gonna set it right there. And I am going to move on to painting my petals. And we're going to do the same thing, okay? You're going to switch colors now. So I'm going to start using my red, okay? And I am going to do my large petals first. I'm just doing them in the order that I'm going to be gluing them, which is the opposite of what they are here, okay? So we're basically going from bottom to top, okay? Got some yellow paint on my brush. There we go. All right. So, dump this salt. Okay. Now I'm going to paint my large petals. And again, don't stress about making these perfect. You don't want them perfect. You want the texture, okay? Having texture adds a little depth and dimension, so it makes it look more 3D versus just a flat drawing. Okay. Ooh, that's cool. Got a lot of red on that one. That looks awesome. Okay. Make sure I have covered all the places. Okay. A little tricky on that last one there. All right. Okay, so same thing. Now we've got our large petals painted, and we're going to lay them down, and we are going to add salt. So just sprinkle some salt over top. If your petals dry out, then just run the paintbrush back over it with a little more watercolor. It's no big deal, okay? All right, so I'm going to set this one aside to dry, like I did the leaves. And what do you think comes next? We're going to do our small petals, okay? So same thing, I'm using red for this. If you do end up using acrylic or tempera and you're worried about your petals and leaves looking too flat because you're missing the texture that watercolor adds, you can use a sponge to apply your paint. Another thing you can do is use multiple colors. So maybe for green, you have a light shade of green and a dark shade of green. For the red, you can use red and white, and that will add some dimension. And then same for the yellow. You would use yellow and white, and that will add dimension. So if you do decide to go the acrylic or tempera route, then there you go. That's a little trick for you there to add some dimension to your project. Okay, so now I have got my small petals painted. I'm just adding some, if you want to add some texture this way, you can do that. You just dab your paintbrush down on the petals. That's a great way to add texture. Okay, so now my small petals are painted, and I'm gonna add salt. Okay, so I will set this aside to dry. Okay, so while those are drying, we are going to prep for the next steps, okay? So I'm just getting all this salt off my page. So you are not going to need these items anymore, and you can move them to the side. You're not going to need your eraser. You're not going to need your salt anymore. We don't need the scissors. And we don't need our paint anymore, okay? Or plates. Or paints. Okay? You don't need your water. So what you can do not leave your paint brushes in your water. That is a no-no. That will ruin your brushes very quickly. So a lot of my students, I find that they have not been taught how to properly take care of their art materials, okay? So when you're finished using your paintbrush, unless you want to go rinse it right away, which you are free, feel free to do that if you want, just rinse it out in your cup. Give it one of these, pull down, okay? Take your napkin, wrap it around it, and just pull it through, okay? So your bristles are not, as my niece says, make sure your bristles don't have a bad hair day, okay? So see how nice my brush looks? Okay, so that's what you want your brushes to look like. When you're finished using it, if it has a top, always put your top back on. And that way, it'll keep it nice looking, and you don't have to spend so much money on brushes all the time, okay? And then put that away. We're not gonna use that anymore. You don't need your water. Put that to the side. We don't want to knock it over, okay? But if you have salt all over your space, you want to make sure that you wipe it up, okay, which is what I'm doing right now. If you did use paper, you can very easily just pick it up like this, and all your salt should be in the middle, and then you can just dump it into the trash, or you can scoop it into your hand like I just did. I have a little rubbish tray over here. Okay, so now what we want to do, your stuff should be fairly dry. It doesn't have to be completely dry to do this next step, but we are going to go one by one again. So while we work on the leaves, your petals will have extra time to dry, okay? So don't stress out if they're not completely dry yet. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to brush off our salt, and we're going to use either your glitter glue pen or glue and glitter, okay? So Miss Crystal has glue and glitter. I don't have glue pen, so I'm going to use glue and glitter. So it might take me a little bit longer than you if you have a glue pen, but that's okay. All right, so we are going to draw very simple outlines on here. Flip to a new page. Okay, so if this is your leaf, okay, we're just going to go from the bottom to the top. And we're going to do 1, 2, 3 lines on both sides of the middle line you drew. Okay, so that's going to be where we put how we put our glue down, and then we're going to put glitter over it. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So first, you want to brush off your salt. So we just cleaned up salt to put more salt, but I promise it's worth it. So I'm going to brush all that off. Okay. So you can see the texture it creates. I did my leaves a little lighter this time, but that's okay. It'll be different than the one I made for a sample, and that's cool. Excuse me, I have to have some tea. It is quite early here, and Miss Christalle had to get up at 7 a.m. But I'm delighted to be here, and I'm so excited for this opportunity to show you guys this great craft. Okay, so I'm opening my glue, and I'm gonna have to do this down. Actually, do this, and that way you can see the pattern I'm creating. Okay, so I'm just gonna go from. I'm gonna start at this point on my leaf, and I'm going to go to the tip of my leaf, just like we did on here, okay? But instead of using a pencil, I'm going to be using glue, okay? So just do a line down the middle. Can you see? Right there, line down the middle. And then I'm going to do the 3 lines on the right side of the line I drew down the middle. And again, if you have glittered glue pens, use those. If you don't, we're doing glue, and then we're going to put glitter on top of it. So I'm going to actually, you're going to continue doing all of your leaves that way, but I want to put glitter on this first one so you can actually see the outline that I did instead of having to squint and see transparent glue on my paper, okay? So again, this is great for the wax, do over the wax paper. So that way, I just have a container of some random extra glitter from when I made the sample, so I'm going to use it so I don't waste it. So you're just going to, and you're just going to shake it off gently. All right. I'm just cleaning it up just a little bit. Okay, so it should look something like that. Okay, so you can see mine's a little messy because it dripped while I was showing you how to put the glue on the leaf. So I'm going to do that on every single one of my leaves. If you miss a spot, like if the glue doesn't fully connect, it's okay. Don't stress about it. Art is supposed to be fun. There is no stress allowed in art. Okay, so I'm going to do that to my remaining 3 leaves. And if you have finished your leaves, you are welcome to move on to the next step, which is doing the same thing to your petals, okay? But it's going to be a slightly different shape. So if you feel confident that you can copy this, go for it. Otherwise, just hold on a second and I will show you the next step. And again, your shapes don't have to be exactly like Miss Christalle's, but I understand if you want your first craft like this and you aren't familiar. Okay. Now I'm just taking my glitter and I am putting it on top of my leaves. That was a lot of glitter. Okay, so I'm going to do that to each one and then gently shake it off. I'm shaking it off onto my wax paper so I don't get it all over the floor. Okay. All right, so I have my glitter, gently shaking it off, and it should look something like this. Okay, so see, my other ones came out much better than the first one I showed. Okay, got a little glitter in my lap. All right, so we are going to set this one aside and let it dry as much as possible before we glue our petals onto it later, okay? So we no longer need the green glitter. You could put the cap on that or the glitter glue pen and put that away. I'm just gonna lift my paper and move mine over a little bit. All right, and then we're gonna move on to our larger petals, okay? So I am just using my napkin, paper towel, and I'm just gently rubbing that salt off of the petals. And there's your texture. And see, the longer you let it sit, the more texture you're going to have. So that's why my sample looks a little more textured, is because it sat a little bit longer, but not quite as much time this morning to do that. So my petals are going to be more textured than my leaves, but that's perfect. Okay. So now we are going to do a glue pattern on our petal. So let me let me outline the glue pattern and show it to you. And we're basically doing the same thing. We're running a line down the center, and let's see if you can see that a little better. Oh, there you go. Okay, that's a little better. So I did one line down the center, a line on top, and a line on bottom. So you remember when I showed you how to do the almond shape? Like this? That's literally what we're doing on our leaf with our glue. Okay? So if this is our petal, okay, our glue is going to go one line down the center, one line on the top, and one line on the bottom. And they do not have to connect, okay? This is just to add some texture to the petals, give it a little more dimension, okay? So once you have your glue down, 5 of your petals like that, then you can move on to putting the glitter on top. And for this, you're going to be using red glitter. Okay. And sometimes I like to connect them on one side, but not the other when I'm putting my glue pattern down. So I'll show you that on some of these. Glitter everywhere. It keeps it exciting, right? Keeps life exciting. All right, I'm gonna get this top off without spilling it. Okay, so we've got some red glitter. I'm just gonna sprinkle that on top of my petals where I laid down the glue. And we're gonna do the same thing we did with the leaves. We're going to gently shake it off once we have the glitter on all of our petals, okay? I'm on my 4th petal. I've got one more to go. So I know a lot of us are sad because we can't be with the ones we love during the holidays because of COVID. But this is something you can do with your family at home to celebrate the holidays. So there we go. Let's see. This one's a good one. T and C. This one, I did not connect the side right there, and that's okay. So don't feel like you have to connect all of your glue points. When you are finished putting the glue, then you can just set this aside just like you did your leaves. And then we are going to do the same exact thing on our small leaves, okay? Same pattern, same glitter color, everything, okay? So again, wipe your salt off of your petals, and you should have some texture, okay? And then you're gonna take your glue and you're gonna do the same pattern. So we're gonna go down the middle, one curved line on one side, one curved line on the other. Make sure you do not get glue in the center yet because you want to leave space to do your yellow dots in the center of your flower, okay? All right, so my glue is done. Should look like that, okay? And now we're gonna do our glitter. Okay, so red glitter again for the petals, okay? And just gently put the glitter on top. If your glitter sticks to some places that the glue isn't, just from the salt or from the water of the paint, don't worry about it. It's okay. It's just going to make it even more sparkly for the holidays. And that's what it's all about, right? Sparkles. Okay, so I have all my petals glittered. I'm going to flip it over, gently tap, and it should look something like this. Okay, so there's a great example right here actually of not connecting the glue, and it's fine. It's totally fine. You don't have to connect it all. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to start, well, first of all, let's do this so we don't make a big mess. Let's put the cap on the glitter or the glitter glue pen, whichever you're using. Okay, for the next step, you are going to need your leaves, your glue, and your large petals. So the bottom layer is going to be your leaves. The middle layer is going to be your large petals, okay? So first thing we're going to do, we're going to take our glue, and we're just going to glue a little bit, just a little dot or circle in the center. Remember we left the center circle? You remember drawing the circle? Okay, so that's what our glue point is. So we're gonna attach this to the bottom of our large petals, okay? So just put a little glue in the center of your leaves. Don't want a ton, but you want enough. Let's see, there you go. Okay, so you want enough where you can, you know it's gonna stick well, okay? So then you're gonna take your petals, bottom of the petals to the top of your leaves, okay? So you're just gonna go just like that. If it's still a little wet, that's okay. Just try to maneuver the leaves and petals so they, like from the center. So you're not touching all of the leaves and petals, you're just sticking them together like this, okay? And what I like to do is I like to line them up to make sure that the petals and the leaves are alternating, okay? So it's not petal on top of a leaf, because when you do that, see, this one's almost on top of each other. You can see like it makes the leaves harder to see through the petals, okay? So you want to make sure you alternate them, okay? And so there's the acrylic one for those that want to do acrylic later, okay? All right. Next step is going to be taking your small petals, and we're going to do the same exact thing, okay? We are going to take our large petals, we're going to put a center dot of glue in the middle, and then we're going to take the back of our small petals and we're going to glue them onto each other, okay? So I am adding glue to my large petals in the center. I'm going to hold them flat because since the glue isn't dry yet, I don't want them to separate, but you can see I've got a little dab of glue in the center, okay? And so I'm just going to take my small petals, do the same thing. You want to make sure they're alternating, okay? So I'm going to kind of play around and figure out how that goes. If some overlap, it's totally fine. Not all of them are going to be, you know, alternating, and that's okay. But just find what is most pleasing to your eye and how you think it looks best, okay? So I'm going to set mine, and then I'm going to show you how I did mine, and then you can do yours if you want to look. Okay. So you should have something like this at this point, okay? As your watercolor dries and your glue dries and your glitter dries, your leaves should and petals should start curving upward, okay? If they don't, I will show you my trick again for doing that, so you have beautiful curling leaves and petals for your project. Okay, that's all for that. Okay, so we are done with our petals and our leaves, and we are ready for the next step. Okay, so you're going to need your cotton swab, your Q-tip, whatever kind you want, and you're going to need your gold, silver, or yellow glitter, whatever color you want to choose for your center. Okay, and then you're going to, I have glitter all over my hands. You're going to take your, we're going back to our paint, okay? So you're going to take your yellow paint. So I've got my yellow paint right here. I'm going to take the paintbrush. If you are using acrylic or tempera or even this thicker watercolor, or maybe gouache, you can use gouache paint too. That would be great for this project. You can just dip the end of your brush in it to make the center dots. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that, and I'll also show you how to do it with a paintbrush. So no matter which medium you're using, you have options. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I added just a little bit of water because I do have watercolor. So you're gonna dip your brush in it. Okay, then you are going to apply it to your poinsettia. So you can make it bigger by just going like that, swirling it around a little bit. Or if you want to use your paintbrush, you can do that. Me, I like to use a cotton swab because I think it gives it a consistent shape and size. So I'm going to take my Q-tip, my cotton swab. I'm going to dip it in my paint. And then I am going to start adding dots to the center of my flower. Okay? And if you need more paint, go back and add more paint. That's totally fine. Okay. And don't make it too thick because you want it to dry fairly quickly. Okay. We are not going to be adding salt at this point. No more salt. Okay. So when you are done, you should have something that looks like this. Okay. If you want your yellow to be brighter, you are more than welcome to, when you do it, just leave a little white next time or lighter in the center. It does not matter though. It's a personal preference, okay? Because we're going to be putting glitter over it, so it's going to show up more anyway. Okay, so when you're done painting that, just blow on it just a little bit. We just want it to dry some so we can apply the glue and glitter. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. We're right at the 1 hour mark. Oh, thanks, Laura. At the 1 hour mark, so I'm gonna try to hurry up because I know most people probably expected an hour time, so I just want to make sure that I'm respectful of your time and try to get this done as quickly as we can. Okay, so we're just gonna blow on that just a couple seconds. Maybe grab a sip of tea while it dries. Okay. Now we are going to add glue. So you're just going to add just a little bit so you can put glitter on it over your yellow dots. You don't want to fully cover them because you do want the yellow to show through a little bit. So I'm just going in and putting little tiny dots of glue. And I kind of do like a away motion when I do it so it doesn't get a huge blob of glue on the flower. And there we go. All of my yellow centers have little glue dots on them. Okay, so last glitter. Enjoy it, guys. Make a mess while you can. You had permission this time, just this once. Okay, so These can be kind of tricky to open, so open them pretty gently so you don't throw glitter everywhere. And then you're just going to sprinkle it on top of your center. And then we'll do the same thing we did with the petals and the leaves, which is gently flip it over and get rid of any excess glitter. Okay, I'm just sprinkling it over the top very gently. I don't want too much on here because it'll make a huge mess. All right, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna flip it. Oop. Tap it a little bit, and then you should have beautiful yellow centers. Okay, and that is how you make a paper plate poinsettia. So, as I mentioned, as your watercolor dries, your paint dries, and your glue dries, these ends should start curving up. If for some reason they're not, sometimes the glue is a little heavy and it might weigh them down. Sometimes there just wasn't enough water on the paper plate and it just didn't curve right. Whatever it may be, there is a very simple solution. So you can use a pencil, you can use a paintbrush, whatever you want. You're going to take the end of it, and I'm going to use my dry example just so I don't get glue everywhere. If it's flat like this, you just want to take the end. So you're going to put your paintbrush like this. You're going to take the tip of the petal or leaf and just curve it around the paintbrush as you roll it down, okay? And make sure your flower is dry when you do this, or you will have glitter and glue everywhere, guys. So when you don't need to hold it too long, then you can just flip it out and unfold it, and it will naturally curl up like that, okay? So that is how you do a paper plate poinsettia. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I had so much fun teaching you this morning.